Howdy guys, Bookie Laura here. Today it's just nearing the end of 2018, which is a very exciting time because it's that time when you've celebrated Christmas and you've setting goals for the new year and you feel full of inspiration and motivation, which we know won't last, but let's make the most of it. Anyway, today what I'm going to do is sort of talk you through the top 5 books that I have read this year. And I'm just going to put it out there right from the start and say I found this really difficult. Like in previous years, what I've done is looked at the books which I've given 5 stars to and then whittled it down into those which were the best and sometimes dipped into the 4 stars. This year, last year, I had to kind of go, okay, these are the 3 that I really like, which others am I going to put in there? And this year it went the opposite way for me. It was like, okay, I started off just writing a list and suddenly the list was huge and I had to really think about which ones to put on there, which, you know, says very good things about the reading that I've had this year. But anyway, these are in no particular order, but they're the top 5 books that I have read in 2018. The first one is The Three by Sarah Lotz. Now, I can't remember an awful lot about this book, but I can remember the way that I was so driven to keep reading it and to find out what it was about, and for me, that is the indicator of a really good book. I vaguely recollect that it was about a significant incident that had happened and it was kind of, you know, I can't think what the word is, apocalyptic maybe? And yeah, and I just really I remember it being quite a long book, but feeling really driven to keep reading it. There is another book in the series, but as it was so long, I think that's put me off slightly. I'm not a big fan of long books, but I really loved it. Really, really loved it. Another book which I read this year and loved was The Lightning Thief, or Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Riordan. I had heard great things about this series but never got round to reading it, and this year I finally did, and I'm really, really glad that I did. I think the middle grade element of it makes for a really easy reading, which is wonderful, but it is essentially an amazing sort of fantasy adventure story, but with a character that I can see great appeal to for middle grade readers. He is, you know, he is a he, and he has several sort of features like ADHD, I think, and dyslexic, and just not, you know, he's just a bit of a troubled youth, and I think that's really appealing and makes you really empathise with him as well. And I think for lots of people who aren't readers, they would really connect with him. And besides all that, it's just an epic adventure. I loved it. Another book which I've loved reading this year was The Humans by Matt Haig. It was the first Matt Haig book that I'd read, and I've read quite a few since then. I absolutely adored this book. I think that I picked it up purely based on what I read about it at the library, that it was just this sort of science fiction-y adventure. It seemed quite funny, quite cool. But what I loved about it was the way that it made me feel. Now that sounds very cheesy and cliche and what have you, but it really did make me think. I mean, it's basically about an alien in a human's body and him trying to sort of come to terms with what it means to be human. And that involved a lot of really thinking about how wonderful life is, and also things like love and friendship and family and relationships can seem very very irrelevant with the bigger picture and unimportant. They are amazing, and it made me, yeah, it's really beautiful, and it makes you really think about all the ridiculous things that make us human, but how amazing they actually are. The next book which I read this year and absolutely loved was Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi, Adeyemi, I think. I haven't got the book, so that's from my memory, so sorry if I'm wrong. This was a sort of really well documented book. Everybody knew about it, everybody was talking about it, and I'm pretty sure everybody has read it, but it's worth saying that it still rates as one of my best books this year. It discusses a lot of issues around sort of prejudice and racism and issues like that, but in a really well done way. I think sometimes when people are trying to discuss those issues, they're a bit lost or they're a bit overpowering, but this fundamentally was a really interesting adventure and exciting book, but made you really think about those other elements as well. I thought she combined those two very well. And then my final book of 2018, and this, I said these were in no particular order, but this is without a doubt my favourite book that I read in 2018, is Nevermoor, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This book is epic, and I have the next one in the series on my shelf and I still haven't read it, and I really, really need to, but I have that kind of if I read it then I've read it. I haven't got it anymore. But anyway, it basically tells the story of Morrigan Crow, who is cursed and knows that she's going to die on her 11th birthday or something like that. The fact that I remember this level of detail says a lot about the book. But anyway, long story short, she doesn't die. I think we all saw that coming. But she gets transported off to this other world to see if she can become part of this group. See how I now don't remember the details? And she has to go through different trials to try and make her way in. And it's magical and wonderful and fantastical and really, really reminded me of Harry Potter. I think that the trials had a Harry Potter element, the magicalness did too, but just the way it put you in this world that you fell in love with, I think, for me. I absolutely fell in love with this other world and wanted to go there and be there and meet all these people, and I'm so excited to read the next book in the series. Can't wait. So those are the top 5 books which I've read this year. Really interesting that when I think particularly about the middle grade and YA elements, books that I've chosen that are on this list, I use the word magical quite a lot. Now if you asked me, I'd say that magical is a word that does not appeal to me about books at all. Yet my top books of the year are all, well, are significantly in that genre. Interesting. Anyway, let me know if you've read any of those Anyway, let me know if you've read any of those books and what are your favourite books of 2018. There's so many good books and this was really hard. And I hope, well, 2019 has a lot to look up to. A lot to live up to. Have a lovely new year. Thank you for watching and I will see you next time. Bye bye.